Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Soul Canvas podcast. I am your host, Jenifer Madsen, and this is the place to be possible. This is where we talk about the pivot points in our lives that, we got to and said yes to something that maybe we didn't see coming, but felt like the way to go, and that led to all sorts of great things happening for our lives. My guest today, I'm so excited to introduce you to Terry Tucker. Terry is a speaker and an author and international podcast guest on these subjects of motivation and mindset and development. He has a very, very diverse business background, professional background, which of course, if you've been with me for a while, you know I love when people have gone down a lot of different paths. I certainly have in my careers, plural. And among those things are, for Terry, are SWAT Hostage Negotiator, hospital administrator, business owner, past 12 years, cancer warrior. We have all sorts of things to talk about with Terry today. And Terry, thank you for being with me. Welcome to the show.
Jenifer, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
Yeah, same. I mean, when I looked at, before I ever saw the details of your bio, I saw the face. And the face was awash in energy. So you really you come to this conversation with a lot of light and a lot of energy. Have you always been like that?
I have. I like people. I've always been a curious type of person. I love finding out about people. I remember hearing recently about a professor at the University of Chicago, a psychology professor, who gives his students this assignment. He says, go out and get on a bus. And in 3 questions, be deep with somebody. So you get on a bus, you sit down next to hi, how you doing? I'm fine. How are you? First question. Second question. And I'm just making this up. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a doctor. Third question. Have you always wanted to be a doctor? No, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or yes, but my mother died at 40 and she was a doctor and I'm honoring her memory by whatever the person says. Now you're deep with somebody.
Yeah.
And honestly, Jenifer, at this point in my life, being deep with people is something that is very, very important to me.
I agree. And when I got my first job out of my second go around with college, so I went back to college when I was 24. I'd gotten sober finally and was ready to come back to the adult world. And I got out, and one of my first big jobs was with a dating service company, which is what moved me to Denver actually in 91. But they taught me this process because we were, it was pre-internet stuff. We were one-on-one with people. And they said, the very first step is this, what they called the relaxer. And I always fancied myself, fairly good with people and gregarious and whatnot. And I was a theater person. But the actual steps that they provided to, as you say, get in and go deep, because we don't do that. We're surface. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And we never really get to know each other. So learning those processes, learning those techniques for really going deep with people, it's so valuable. Now, tell me about what came first, hospital administration or SWAT hostage negotiator?
Hospital administration came first.
Okay, so how do you go from hospital administrator to SWAT? I got to hear that story.
So yeah, there is a backstory. I mean, if you look at my resume, it kind of
There
looks
has to be a backstory.
Yeah, like a super ball went off in the room. It's like it's all over the place. But my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, had been a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in 1933 was shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories growing up that my grandmother told of that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us. Your husband's been shot. So when I expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. That's the life my father wanted me to lead. That's not the life I felt I was supposed to lead. So I graduated from college, first person to graduate in my family to graduate from college, and my father's dying of cancer. So I have a choice. I could have said, "Hey, Dad, no, you're dying. Sorry about that. I'm going to go do my own thing, blaze my own trail, or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do." So, understanding the backstory, my first two jobs were in business. I was in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's, and
Mm,
then I actually went to work for the hospital that cared for my father while he was dying. And then at 37, after he'd passed away, I made that major pivot in my life and became a police officer.
wow. So you had wanted to be a police officer. It's
Yeah, I
some,
wanted to be in law enforcement in some way. When I was in
okay.
college, I tried to get on with the Secret Service, and that didn't work. And so,
Yeah.
but yes, law enforcement was kind of in my blood, I felt.
And how interesting that it kind of like stayed background to the conversation, but that never left you. That pull, that desire never left you.
It didn't. And Jenifer, that's one of the things I guess I'm most proud of in my life
Yeah.
is that I never let my dream die. I could
Mhm.
have said, "Hey, I'm a hospital administrator, making decent money. This is a good job." But
Yeah.
I gave all that up, certainly with the help. My wife encouraged me and supported me and things like that.
Mhm.
Because basically, I was a 37-year-old rookie police officer. I can tell you, I took
Wow.
a whole lot more Tylenol in the police academy than my younger counterparts did.
I bet you did. I bet you did. And what exactly were you saying yes to? Because again, this conversation I love to have with people about like what was the turning point that made you say yes to the next thing for whatever transformation that brought? Why SWAT? Why negotiator?
Well, I SWAT because usually the members of a SWAT team, whether it's local or federal or a county, whatever it is, they're usually the best officers with the best training and the best equipment.
I would
And I
hope.
always wanted to be part of the best
Yeah.
in my life. So that part was something I wanted to do. And then negotiating was again, I mean, for those who don't know about SWAT, it's usually divided into two teams: the tactical team and the
Mhm.
negotiators. And the tactical team are the men and women with all the toys, all the different
Yeah.
guns and the armored cars and all that. And we used to joke with them that, if we did our job right as negotiators, you didn't get to use all your toys and things like that.
Right.
So it wasn't sitting, concealed in a bush for 6 hours watching a house. It was, I want to be on the phone with somebody, again, going deep. I mean, obviously, if you're talking to me and your house is surrounded by the police, you're probably having the worst day of your life. And
Yeah, I
so
would
I
think.
wanted to be part of giving back, the
Mhm.
service component of helping these people, kind of getting them to a point where they come out safely and they can get on with their lives. And that was really the draw for me.
Wow, what incredibly impactful work. And I know without having been in it that it doesn't always end with a great outcome. Many times I imagine it does because someone like you has been willing to ask the questions and go deep and be there to listen to what was coming back to reach a resolution and how impactful that must have been for you. Gratifying doesn't feel like the word, like, because I get you're not that guy. Like, I'm going to go in so that I can feel self-important and gratified, grateful, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we were successful about 90% of the time getting the
Really,
person out. But
really.
about 10% of the time, and a lot of it was it was how the person handled it. I mean, were you going to come out based on talking to me? We were going to have to send the tactical team in to get you? Or, and about 10% of the time this happened. For example, if you were a homicide suspect and we had you cornered and you knew that when you came out, you were going to go to prison for the rest of your life. Several of those people said, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to end my life here." And
Sure.
Jenifer, while that's always tragic, and I don't mean to sound callous about this, I never lost any sleep over it because I knew I did the very best I could to get you out. I
That's
worked
right.
with great people and I had great training. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it was really your decision on how this was going to end.
Yeah, one of three things is going to happen there. Wow.
Exactly.
Where did you go from there? From SWAT to what?
I started a school security consulting business and coached girls' high school basketball, which is almost as hard as being a SWAT hostage negotiator.
I'll bet. I'll bet. I know you have quite the basketball background personally, but so you were coaching girls and then you said you were working in the schools doing what?
I did school security consulting. So,
Yeah.
determining, where you were vulnerable, writing policies and procedures, training their staff and things like that.
Yeah. How long were you doing that?
I did that up until I got cancer in 2012.
Hmm. So the cancer journey, tell me about that.
Yeah, 2012, I find out I have this very rare form of melanoma, and most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun affects the melon, the pigment in our skin.
Sure.
Mine has nothing to do with sun exposure. It's a rare form that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. Mine appeared on my foot, and I ended up going to a podiatrist friend of mine, and he
Mhm.
took the cyst out, sent it off to pathology, and then 2 weeks later gives me this call. And as I said, he's a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he's having explaining to me what's going on, the more frightened I am becoming.
Of
Until
course.
finally he just lays it out for me. He says, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have this incredibly rare form of melanoma. So he sent me to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston to be treated. And once they took out the tumor on the bottom of my foot and all the lymph nodes in my groin, they told me I'd be dead in 2 years. And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I can try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence. Now, I mean, the whole journey, and it would take hours to tell you the whole journey, but
Mhm.
I was on a drug for 5 years that gave me flu-like symptoms every week because
Ugh.
of the side effects. Then I had my foot amputated in 2018, my leg amputated during the COVID pandemic, and I also found out I had tumors in my lungs, which I still have, and I'm still treated for every 3 weeks. So it's been a long journey. But honestly, Jenifer, I always say I've probably done more living in the almost 13 years now that I've been dying of cancer than I've done in my entire life. And I had a pretty good life before I got cancer.
It sounds like it. So how has it shaped your decisions? How do you live?
I, I learned early on that you need to find meaning in your misery. I've made peace with death. I've been to the cemetery after I found out, I had these tumors in my lungs and I had my leg amputated. I went with my wife to the mortuary, the cemetery, the church. I planned my funeral. And because I come on podcasts and talk, about motivation, need to keep moving forward or speak to people in person, I actually got some brushback from a lot of people that commented that somehow planning my funeral was in some way defeatist. I
Really?
know I was the same. I was like, what? And like the last time I checked, we're all going to die. I don't think anybody's working on,
No one's no one's getting out alive.
yeah, nobody's working on a cure for life right now, as far as I know.
Right.
I mean, we're all going to die, but we're not all going to truly live. And I,
Mhm.
I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that I absolutely love. And it goes like this: when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your
Oh.
life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I.
Wow. Oof. Hmm. That's incredible. And you've mentioned your wife, you have a wife, you have children, and how are they working with the information about your cancer diagnosis, the developments around that? How do they live?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have been married for 31 years. We have one daughter
Congratulations.
who's actually in the military, is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. But it's funny. I talk about what's got me through this is really in this order: faith, family, and friends. And there's kind of a funny story. After I had my leg amputated, my doctor wanted to put me on chemotherapy, and I looked at him and said, "Is it going to save my life?" He said, "Yeah, probably not, but it might buy you some more time." And I said, "Well, if the outcome's going to be the same, if I'm going to die, then I would rather not do it all drugged up, but I'll go home and talk to my family." And so I start telling, when I get home, start telling my wife and daughter the story. And my daughter's immediately, "All right, we need a family meeting." I'm like, "Family meeting? There's three of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that." So we sit around the kitchen table and individually talk about how we all feel about me having chemo. And then
Yeah.
when we're done, my daughter's like, "All right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy?" And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, "Wait a minute."
That's not fair. That's
I'm
not fair.
voted for something that I don't want to do. But Jenifer, I remember when I was back in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the
Mm,
people we loved the most to class. And as we were learning different techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I took chemotherapy not
Yeah.
because I wanted to, but because my wife and daughter, I mean, they would not
You
let
got
me not
flat
take it.
outvoted. That's right.
Yeah, I was outvoted. I didn't have stand a chance.
You did not have a vote.
Even the dog voted on their side.
It sounds like you have incredible support system. And from that diagnosis, so, you said you were working in the schools and you were coaching basketball and things went on from there after the cancer diagnosis. When did you start? I don't know if it was a starting of a business in the motivational and personal development world, but when did you start stepping into that with your message?
Probably about 2019. I mean, right after I was diagnosed, I was put on that drug that gave me those severe flu-like symptoms. So for almost 5 years, I was totally checked out. I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
And then, as things moved, I had my foot amputated. Okay, I can do more things. I mean, I never started out to do that. It was more people suggesting that I do these things. And there's sort of an old joke that goes, when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So, God never said, Terry, do this. But I think what God did was put enough people that I admired, that I looked up to in my path, saying, hey, you've got a decent story here that other people could benefit from. You need to start telling that story.
Yeah.
And I'm not I know it doesn't seem like that. I like to keep things close to the vest. I don't like to get out there and kind of air it. But if you're going to do this, if you're going to get up in front of people, if you're going to go on podcasts, it's got to be warts and all. It's got to be, I did this, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, I'm not proud of whatever it is. And that took me a long time to kind of get over that. Well, I'm not sharing that, because I don't like to share things with people. I know that you find that hard to believe, considering you can't shut me up, but yeah, so.
No, I know I do get that. I do get that because having been in this world for 20 some odd years now with my own coaching business, it's easy to get into a mode of like being that for other people, but keeping the other things a little closer. And I made a decision a long time ago. Now, I got sober when I was 24, and drugs and alcohol literally almost killed me. In the short time I was drinking for, the 10 years from the time I started to the time I finished, it almost killed me. Not to be dramatic, it's the truth of the matter, right? So I've been sober for almost 40 years now, and I have told my stories around that ever since. Not just in AA meetings or NA meetings, but like out in public, because I get the chance and the choice as to whether or not to be anonymous about that. And I know that there is some part of me, whatever God is, that I am grateful that I had the opportunity to turn that mess into a message, to be in a position to say, here's the hope beyond. Because what you mentioned a moment ago was having people in your life who see more for you than you can see for yourself. And when you respect those people and you look at them and go, like, I'm going to take that to heart. Like, this person really sees something for me. I owe it to the world practically to go to at least check it out, right? Even if it's, as you say, even if it's uncomfortable or not necessarily purely in my nature, because we learn things from these. Look, I think we learn stuff from the day to day too. We just don't tend to pay as much attention to it as we do if someone shows up and says, you're an alcoholic, or wants to take your foot, or the big, big, big stuff that makes us either pay attention or not. In the addiction realm of things, it's interesting because since I've been sober for so long, of course, I've been in like thousands of conversations with people who have addicts in their life, for instance, and say, well, this happened and that happened, and how bad does it have to get? As bad as it has to get, right? I mean, things have to get where things have to get, I think, in order for us to go, oh, here's the thing. Now, I was recovering from something. That's not the same as finding out that you have cancer. And yes, you have to recover from that or go through a healing with that. And there's that similarity, but there are some massive differences that I get. I think what I'm getting to is that there are people who live fully, despite or because of that, and there are people who will not because of that. I've had this horrible addiction thing happen in my life. I can't do any more life. I've had this cancer diagnosis. I can't do life. Or they come to it like you have and turn it into something. What has been the biggest challenge for you in the last, let's say, the last 5 or 6 years since COVID and being in the motivational world? What are the biggest challenges with that for you?
I mean, a lot of it is the physical limitations that I have. I'm 6'8" tall. I mean, I don't have a leg above the knee. And, I was a physical person. I played Division I college basketball. I was, a police officer on a SWAT team. And now I'm in a wheelchair and I don't have a left leg.
Yeah,
And, you kind of have to balance that by saying when you can't do what you're good at, you do what's important. And I think now, and I think you would probably agree, when you come through, there's a great line in the book, oh shoot, Ernest Hemingway's book, Farewell to Arms.
mm,
And there's a great line in there that says, life breaks everyone. And afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. And I think you and I have figured that out. When you go through hell, you've got to keep going. And if you come out the other side, you are a different person. You are a better person in that. So it's been balancing really what my whole life had been about, doing physical stuff with now I really can't do that much physical stuff, but what can I do? What,
right.
what can I can write, I can speak about my experiences and what I've learned and offer those to people. And so that's where I've sort of find the meaning in the misery. I'm
Yeah,
supposed to be doing this. I always say that I think God
that's clear.
is using me as a conduit to show my infirmity, my malignancy, and his power, his grace, his love, and his mercy. So
Do you ever get mad?
not a God. I've never asked why. Why not me? Why shouldn't I get cancer as opposed to my next door neighbor? I mean, what makes me any more important? I got this. I've had all 88 genes tested that
Yeah,
doctors either know of or suspect cause every form of cancer that we know about. And I have absolutely no mutations in any of my genes that would predispose me to any form of cancer, let alone this weird form that I have,
yeah,
which begs the question, why did I get it?
yeah.
I don't know. And nobody's ever been able to tell me why I got it. I got it. And so I don't spend time saying, why'd you do this to me, God? I just say, use me. Use me, whatever you want me to do. Show me what you want. I say that every morning. All right, God, tell me what you want me to do today. And I will do that to the best of my ability. So I'm using this, I hopefully, as a way to make the world a better place.
Yes, and it's really clear that there's a commitment to asking quality questions. Like, not why me, but what now?
Yeah.
What do I do with this? How do I make this the most useful? Do you ever get mad in general? Like mad in life?
I mean, I get down when I have my every 3 week treatments. I have a very bad reaction. I shake violently. I throw up. I won't go into all the other things, but it's not fun, and it beats the
No.
heck out of me. And so I get down. I get depressed. I feel sorry for myself. I cry, but I never really get mad. I use humor. I mean,
Yeah, I can see
when I
that.
was 6'8" and would walk into a room, everybody would turn and look. Now, when I roll into a room without a leg in a wheelchair, everybody turns and looks. So I think it's incumbent upon me to make a joke out of it. I remember one time after I had my foot amputated, I was walking out of the hospital and there was a woman near the exit. And you've seen those people, they're like staring like right through you. And I kind of looked around like, is she looking at me? And I was the only person there, so she was. And so I got right up to her. I stopped. I turned. I looked her right in the eye, and I said, "Don't worry, it'll grow back." And I just kept walking. And I turned and I looked at her face, and it was like, "What is this guy, like some kind of salamander or something?" You cut off his tail, it comes back, and that guy. I mean, it was. I just use humor to try to
That's amazing.
downplay the. Oh, this is serious. This is ugly. Yeah, it is. But you know what? You got to have fun with life too.
Yeah. Well, who knows whether or not we have another go round after this one.
That's
So,
true.
should we come back around, my belief, I'm practicing Buddhist, and so we do tend to believe in reincarnation.
Mhm.
We don't know it's true, but we tend to believe that. So my sense of this is that should I get another go round or 1,000, however, I really want to do the best I can on any given day. Some days are better than others. Some days I am fully in my spirit given genius to help others, and some days I need a nap. And I need to like step away from people and not be with the people. Some days I don't people very well. And when you know that you have, and the message that I hope our listeners get from this conversation is that, so much of what we do next comes from asking the right questions, despite what we're faced with, despite the enormity of it, the gravity of it, the what the heck am I supposed to do next of it? What do I do next of it? But you've taken this to this beautiful level of not just what's next, but what's next that's going to make a difference. Like meaning has come up in your conversation with me, and I know in the other podcasts that you've done and in your book and all of that sort of thing. What's the big message you want our listeners to hear today?
Yeah, there's so many of them. I guess let me say this. Regardless of what you do in your life, I would say it's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you
Mm.
do. Find people that care about you, find people that are willing to invest in you, find people that want to see you succeed, hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together.
And in this process that I work with people on, finding their vision and aligning those resources to support them and mapping it all out, believe it or not, the two parts that seem to be the most challenging for people is number one, claiming that vision for their lives, claiming something that feels bigger for them. And I don't mean bigger as in your story is more important than mine or vice versa, but just for themselves, like being with themselves and in themselves enough to say, here's my gift in the world. I really need to go do this thing. And what would you tell them about, I guess, how to do that?
I would say a couple things. We all have unique gifts and talents. Don't ever think that you're not here for a reason. You are. And if you don't believe me, go read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. He talks in that book about you should not live your life in the abstract. There's a reason you were put on the face of this earth.
Mm-mm.
So I guess the first thing I would tell you to do is understand your values. What's foundational for you? What's that rock that you can anchor your life to, no matter where society goes? And then secondly, what are your unique gifts and talents?
Mm.
And there's a man by the name of Jeff Wetzler wrote a book called Ask. And
Yes.
you read it? And I heard him on a podcast. And he says, and I've done this in my life, that we do these arbitrary goalposts or mileposts. And we say, by the time I'm 28, I want to be making $100,000 a year. Or by the time I'm 35, I want to be married and have a family. And if those things don't happen on schedule, then somehow we look at ourselves as a failure.
That's right.
So look at life differently. And I wish I would have known this when I was younger. He said, look at your life in decades. In your 20s, do everything that you're interested in. Make all kinds of mistakes. But if anything interests you, do it. Then in your 30s, find those two or three things that you really enjoy and dig into those. And then he says in your 40s, find that one thing, that thing that's in your soul, that's in your heart. You're more mature, you're more established, you know how the world works, and do that. And then he says in your 50s, 60s, and beyond, you can reap the rewards, you can reap the benefits of
Yes.
living your life that way. So,
Yes.
and the other thing I guess I would say is wherever you are, just start. Just jump in wherever you are and figure it out as you go along. We all think that when we get to the top of the rainbow or at the top of the mountain, that that's what life's about. That's not what life's about. Life is the journey to get to the top of the mountain.
Well, you'll appreciate this. Having lived in Colorado before, as we discussed before we started our recording today, I remember going to Vail for the first time. And I had lived in Florida and I had lived on the East Coast and I had never lived around mountains. And so my now former husband and I went and we were going to go learn how to ski. And I looked at that first vista of the mountains and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going up there. And the ski instructor goes, yeah, no, we're we're going a little bit further beyond that, right? So we did. We got to the top of that mountain, literally, and that part of the mountain, and then saw the next and saw the next. And as you take those on and realize how to literally navigate your way back down, and hopefully with no broken bones, etc. And then my niece came to us, and she was about 13, I think, to come skiing. And she and I go to Vale, and she stood at the bottom. She did the exact same thing, Terry. She was like, "Oh, we're going there." And I thought, "Oh no, sister, we're going." We are literally going way beyond that mountain. But if I tell you too much about how big that mountain is and how much taller it is than what you're seeing right now, you might not be able to get your head around it. So let's take this mountain, right? Like, let's take this mountain. You got this. I got you. We got people, we've got support. Let's take this mountain. We'll figure out the next one. So, well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today and share your message and share the meaning behind your message and the very fine details of your life with us, Terry. It's meant a lot to talk to you.
Well, Jenifer, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, and I hope our conversation will add value to your audience.
I'm certain that it will. And to my listeners, viewers, as always, you will find all of the details in our show notes about how to connect with Terry. Terry, you have a book, yes?
I do. It's called Sustainable Excellence 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life.
I love that. So, listeners, you will find all of those links to find the book, to find Terry, to find more of your remarkable, exceptional energy and love. I appreciate it very much. We'll see you again, hopefully.
Thank you.